Let's
All
do
right,
it.
all right. Welcome everybody to another episode of Grind My Gears. I have a very special guest today, and he's an amazing person. But before I get to him, log on to www.ashtondarymma.com, and we got the new line, the Dilf Bod shirts. Hold on, let me move this mic. Dilf Bod. We got the new
Yeah.
line out. Just released Dilf Bod. I'm starting a new movement. It's not only about MILFs anymore. It's about DILFs. I'm a dad, and let's do it. So if you log on to www.ashtondarymma.com, get your new Dilf Bod shirt. Use discount code DILF and get yourself.
I mean, count me in, man. I need one.
And Professor Bruckmann, or Justin Bruckmann, as other people know him. I know him as Professor Bruckmann because in
Thanks,
the martial arts community, we are respectful. How's it going, Professor?
I'm good, man. Life is fantastic. I actually have made start so many things happening. You know what I mean? Start a new career, and then but still be able to be on the mats, and I'm healthy, and for the most part, yeah, life's okay, man. It's exciting as usual. Yeah,
Well, you always keep it exciting. You're
I
like
try to, man.
you're one of those. I have a hard time finding, like, I can't ever recall a time where I've actually seen you like pissed off. Like,
Oh man, life's too short to be angry, man. Like I don't know. I lived my first half of my life mad, and it wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? I just do it. I try to do everything with a smile on my face, and to kind of stay on that constant adventure and see the good in everything. And that's the only way to live, man. I can't. You can't sit around and sulk. It doesn't get anything done.
well, I mean, if the last what? How long has it been? 18, more than 18 months now since the
Yeah, it's almost 2 years. It's crazy.
almost 2 years shifted. I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is because I know like things for you kind of changed quite a bit over that time. So
hmm
how like I know COVID's like a fucked up time, but how has it kind of shifted or changed your perspective on life?
um, man, it's in so many different ways. It's really sad to see the divide in people. It really shows the ugly side of people, but at the same time, it's really shown it. Man, how kind people can be. You know what I mean? And it really has like. Yeah, COVID's thrown the gas on the human race, man. You get to find out who the good and who the bad are really easily now. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? And,
it's quite
it's
obvious. Like now, I mean, it's quite obvious when you just simply just turn on your phone. You can kind of see what's.
yeah, it shows people. It's sad because the internet is makes everything so much. It's just a goddamn mess. But it really did show people's true colors and at their ugly sides. But like I said, that to it really did bring out the best in people, man. I've seen so much kindness from people, you know what I mean? And people, as much as it's driven people apart, you see people really step up to help each other too. So,
Yeah,
there's that side to it as well. So,
I mean, like the martial arts community in specific suffered a lot during this time.
oh,
Mainly,
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into all the like the political bullshit because we all know that, but it was like mainly because martial arts got lumped in with the fitness industry, basically. When
Yeah.
it's a part of fitness, but like you know what I mean. It got lumped into that danger zone, and like the government's sort of like blacklisted it to put.
Yeah. But I don't think they really had a choice. You know what I mean? Whereas like maybe the fitness industry and the martial arts we know the difference, but it really like going to the gym and that fitness industry and it's just as important to people as martial arts is to us.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That's their therapy as well. So they really, from the political standpoint, they had no choice but to lump us kind of all in together, man. Like it is, you're going in there and sweating all over each other and like in crowded spaces and whatever. So from that kind of, I guess, scientific point of view, like why wouldn't they put us in the same thing? But
but yeah.
the whole thing is a goddamn mess, right?
Yeah, so
So
it's yeah, and like obviously you started this new venture, right? But like
mhm.
I wanted to tell you before, like when you put out that message that Bruckmann's MMA was going to be closing down temporarily, or like we'll get to that, but that one really hurt me a lot, right? Because
Yeah.
I used to drive out there long drives to make it there, and it was such a great experience. I loved coming to your place. So when that one when you said you were to do that, it really hit hard, and I think it hit a lot of other people hard because I think that's when we knew that this was kind of real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It affects a lot of people, and that one really hit everybody a lot hard because once you said that, and I would go to the gym and people like, oh man, Professor Bruckmann's place, right? So, I mean, what led to that decision for you?
Uh, it was a lot of there was a lot of factors, like good and bad for that. Like man, I've had the most amazing career and job in martial arts. Like I've done more than most people will ever get to experience in this job. Like in my generation and Omar and everyone else, like we made this job up. You know, what I mean, it
Yeah,
didn't even
yeah, I know.
exist before us, really. And but it's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard physically and emotionally. You invest so much into the job and the people, and a lot of us we're just not businessmen to begin with. You know what I mean? I was a fighter with no education, and I didn't know what else to do, but I knew how to fight, and I knew how to. I learned how to teach, and I learned how to run the business side, a little bit of things, but I was never really good at that part, and it was that became very very stressful over the years, especially when COVID hit. We really had to start crunching numbers, and that
Yeah,
wasn't my strong point. And emotionally dealing with all these people and relationships and coaching and just mentoring, it gets exhausting for the amount of money you're paid to do. I invest my heart and soul into anything that I do. I'm going for it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
uh, it was just draining for years and years training. And as much as I loved it, uh, I knew I was going to have to get out at some point because it was going to kill me anyway.
yeah,
So when COVID kind of went down, it was a fucking disaster because like I was just like everyone else. I was scared. I don't have any other job skills or anything else, and but I was so fortunate that almost all of my students were like, keep cashing our checks. You know what I mean? We'll keep the place going, and we need it to be there when this is over with. And even more importantly, the people who were did know that I was tired. They're like, just take the money until you decide what you want to do. You've done enough,
yeah,
right? So now I was like, oh man, but so hundreds of people gave me the opportunity to like sit back and really, reassess my life and figure out what I want to do. And so it was a combination of like COVID crushed, decimated the industry sort of thing, and I was a little bit tired and worn out anyway. So if COVID hadn't have come and these things happen, I never would have. I'd still be doing the same grind. You know what I mean? I never would have taken the chance to do something. So in a way, it made me. It
blessing in
made me
disguise.
show.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, it made me show my cards and like and fucking man up and do something new. So, um, yeah, it was a really really tough decision, and because I've done this, I've never had a job. I've done this my whole life. I fought till I couldn't fight anymore, and then I did this,
you did
and
that.
then but it was a couple. Yeah, it was a few of my students who have moved on to open their own gyms, and they're like, "We got it from here, man. Just rest." And I was like, "Fuck yeah, thanks, man." Like that's all I needed to hear because I needed to know the hardest part for me closing wasn't the money. I could work anywhere. I could work at Walmart. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I know what you mean.
And then, but it wasn't the money is that I was going to leave all these people that called our place home without a home. You know what I mean? But everyone landed on their feet, and all the gyms that made it in my little circle or alliance, man, they're fucking booming now,
Yeah,
right? Because everyone's itching to get back, and then they absorbed all my people, so I still see all my students every week, and everyone's doing great. You know what I mean? So it was just, yeah, like it was a blessing in disguise. Disguise. It was time for me to get out because I was gonna have a heart attack sooner or later. So yeah,
well, I mean, it's not the easiest industry.
no,
I don't think people really understand how much actually goes into it. Like you spend years and years and years getting that black belt to be able to proficiently teach and communicate, and not only just teach and communicate, but actually bring up like good students, like good martial
yeah,
artists. And for the most part, we don't get paid during that process of getting to that black belt or getting to that uh, really good stage of instruction and skill set. Like you
yeah,
don't make any money getting there. And then
No.
when you do get there, it's kind of like what you said. It's some guys are really good teachers, but they're not great businessmen, and it's not their fault because there's so many components to it. Like it's
Yeah.
either you can be a great, it's either you can be a half-ass instructor and a great businessman, which there are some of those
Oh,
martial arts out there.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they have a room full of hundreds of people, but I'll pop in once in a while and be like, yeah, the instruction, what, it's not the
Mhm.
greatest, right? But then you'll have the ones, the Omars of you that have dedicated lives to like perfecting and honing the craft, and
Yeah.
there's a give and take. You can't be that good and not and like run like a company like Apple. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah. No, oh, for sure. There is, I know very few people that can manage the people and the money at like that top notch level. You know what I mean? It's one or the other.
yeah,
I look at a guy like Gringo, like that guy knows how to do it because he's a ridiculously good instructor.
yeah,
And he trains like world champs, but man, he handles his money and builds his business well on top of it, right? And you'd rarely get that where you have a leader who everyone loves, but can still get paid at the same time. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It's always ends up being some uh, there's the guy at the gym who's a great instructor and everyone loves, and then some shitty partner that no one likes because he's the money guy. You know
yeah,
what I mean? It kind of that's usually how it goes to be successful. But there is people now. Cal Sammer is another example in Bowmanville, who the owner Brendan Kaljunick, great fighter, excellent coach, good businessman as well. Like so, that's that new breed is coming. Guys are seeing there is an industry, so the fighters are learning how to manage the side of it when they get out of
yeah.
competition, right?
And
So it's happening.
that's one of the blessings that came out of COVID for me too, because like I think a lot of people think like I was doing super well before, but I was actually just being a contractor. I was working, right? And
Yeah,
my wife had her job, and then in December of 2019 we had our second kid, and
yeah,
she went on mat leave right when COVID started. And then when everything got shut down, my position as a trainer, as a contractor, that went out the door. So all of
hmm
a sudden, we're like, hey, you had this company you started, but you didn't do anything with it. Step the fuck up, big boy. It's
yeah,
time to put your big boy pants on. And so that's what I did. And to me, it was a blessing in disguise because if that didn't happen, it wouldn't have like like when fighters need that push or people just need that push. And that was that for
hmm
me. As soon as I realized, shoot, we have like she's not employed and you're fucked now, Ashton. You step it up, right? So I mean,
yeah,
I think it was a blessing for a lot of people, but I also think like not everybody was able to step up to the plate, so to speak.
yeah. I think I it's easy for everyone, no matter who you are, man, woman, or what your career is, whatever else, to become complacent. So when you're faced with adversity, it's kind of a lot of times it's just easier to sit back and just see what happens. Like, but I think like guys like myself and you, and like who who already know how to fight. You know what I mean? Like we've already kind of done the hardest shit. So you're like, nah, yeah, you got to. It's just another challenge. Like if I wasn't like fighting and everything I've done led me to this point. But but at the same time, if I didn't learn all those skills first, if I had met this fork in the road in my life without all the skills I learned, in the trenches, I would have probably fucking crumbled. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so what do you get, man? You've been locked in a cage with a dude trying to fucking bite your face off. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen now?
I
You
tell
know what
that
I
to a lot
mean?
of people because they'll be like, because sometimes like when shitty thing after shitty thing after shitty thing happens, and like most people will be like, oh, this is terrible, my life sucks. A lot of the time I'll be like, whatever, and they're like, how can you have that attitude? And I'm like, and I'll say, to me, you want to know what the worst place in life is to me? It's being in the third round, absolutely exhausted, and having a monster on top of you, full mounted, beating the fuck out of you. To me,
Yeah,
that's the worst place I can be on the planet. Like that,
yeah,
that is the thing I fear the most. If that's not happening to me, I can deal with it. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like, so that's the beauty of like, even if I was to never compete again, I've taken that away from the sport, where like that is the worst place that I can imagine. If I'm not there, then life is peachy. You know what I
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh, you said we to be good at what we do, you have to continuously put yourself in tough spots,
mean? Yeah,
right? And so that becomes a habit. And when the tough, these things come up, then they are more manageable, right? Because you are used to being in those situations that are high stress and high pressure. You just got to come up with the answers to the questions that are thrown at you,
absolutely. So what led you to this new business venture with tattoo?
right? Yeah, so I now work at unwanted laser tattoo removal in Whitby, Ontario, and um, I have a very good friend who yeah, I would say my best friend. We've been traveling and training around the world for years. He's uh, his fiance is I became very good friends with her, and she already ran a very successful salon, like clinic. They do the lashes and brows and all that weird women stuff. And they wanted she's like, I would like to add this. I'm going to start a new business that I would like to add this. Would you like to be get involved? And I'm like, that sounds amazing. And they hooked me up. We did they helped me out with the training, and she built the facility, and it's beautiful. And she literally just uh, tailor made this job for me because she knows my skills with people. You know what I mean? I'm easy to talk to. I can relate to anyone, rich or poor, man or woman. I understand tattoos. I understand the business. I understand, you know what I mean? Let's say just traveling the world and teaching for 20 years. I know how to get along with people and
Yeah,
make them feel safe. And I have the greatest fucking job in the world, man.
yeah.
I
That's good.
I'm in my workspace right now. I'm like, I'm gonna go report at work.
Yeah,
I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be than at work every day. It's the fucking best job in the world. Like,
that's
yeah, I was born to do this job.
that's the best thing. That's like
Yeah.
one of the hardest things for me because I have a lot of clients and I train a lot of people. One of the hardest things for me to like stomach sometimes is when like I ask somebody if they enjoy what they do and they're just like meh, it's a job. And I'm like, and I understand that, and I understand people have to pay the bills and stuff. But I really love like I love what I do. I love all the
Mm,
things that I'm doing right now. I love it. Like I have to get up. I barely get any fucking sleep. I combine with still trying to get my body back in shape to compete again. Combined with raising two fucking kids, it's a like most people would cave. But I'll
yeah.
wake up at 5 and I'm like, fuck, I'm tired. Oh, whatever. I love what I do. And like
Yeah.
that's once you get that why, it's hard to stop you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's very few people to say they like their job, man. It's the reality of things, you know what I mean? And even with my old job, like on paper or from the outside, it looks like the greatest job in the world, but it's still hard as shit and very stressful. As much as I love it, there's always going to be components that you don't like. Anytime you have to do something for money, it's going to involve something that sucks. Like, fortunately for you and I, it's only like 10-20% sucks. The rest of it is great.
Yeah,
That's easy to live with, right? Where like I've had jobs where I dread, even like before my last job ended, I hated going in there every day, even though I loved it. You know what I mean? I was still like, I dread going to work.
yeah,
And yeah, I feel bad for people that have to live like that. You in life, you better like your fucking job. You better like your bed, and you better like your car, because that's where you spend your life. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like driving back and forth to your job to pay for your bed. It's
yeah,
fucked up, but that's just the way the world works.
yeah,
And yeah, very few people can say that, they love their job. And you hear it all the time. Wow, if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. I'm like, I wish it was that easy for everyone, man. But
it's not that easy, but I think it's more of the why. You know what I mean?
mhm,
When that dumbass alarm goes off, and you're like, "Fuck! I just want 2 more hours. I just want to lay in my bed 2 more hours." But there's like that little trigger in your brain that says, why? Why is your alarm going off? And for me, that's when I get up. And sometimes, like, I'll get up and I'll still want to just lay back down, but then I'll look in that bed and I'll see those two little shits, and I'm like, all right,
yeah, yeah.
there,
Oh, for sure, man. Like it's yeah, man. That's love, man. You got to make sacrifices, right? And and like that's the best job in the world, is being a parent, right?
yeah,
So you got to do the other one to enjoy that one.
yeah, I
So
know. So I wanted to talk about jujitsu. because that's what.
Yeah, man. Let's go.
Uh, Now I wanted to ask you about something that I've been grappling with people with for a while. What difference between the new jujitsu, right? Like our sport jujitsu that's occurring, and um old school self defense jujitsu. Because
Yep.
I was listening to like Hickson. He was on he did a podcast with Jocko and with Joe Rogan recently,
Yeah.
and they were talking. He was talking about how jujitsu back in the day was defense based, where an average student will go into the gym and they actually know how to defend themselves against strikes and
Hmm.
defend themselves against an opponent that's actually like physically trying to hurt them.
Hmm.
Whereas the new kind of jujitsu that you know most people will get involved with now as a white belt is sport jujitsu,
Yeah.
where you don't the skills aren't necessarily always transferable in real life situation. What do you think is like the best approach or the best way?
Um, so I'll tell you, I think I can almost guarantee you're going to agree with me because you learned from Professor Omar. So, I'm like the way I love all forms of jujitsu.
Yeah,
I think
same.
it's beautiful and I think it's creative, right? But I learned jujitsu because I wanted to fight. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I didn't learn jujitsu to learn jujitsu. I want to do MMA, so it's just functional. Like, so the way I teach still, and the way I train still when I do train, is I go old school Brazilian jiu-jitsu self-defense, like like how to defend yourself from strikes and close guard and takedowns, whatever else, and whatever. Because I find even for me when I roll with the I stick to the absolute basics. So when I do roll with these more modern guys, like these brown and purple belt like studs,
Yeah.
I might not beat them, but I know how to defend myself at all times. And they're going all this worm guard and invert and weird shit. I'm like, all right, but and you might take my back, but you're not going to fucking choke me because I
Yeah.
learned how to defend myself in a fight first, right? So I find that traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu and self-defense training works no matter what the rule sets are. So I try to coach that first.
Yeah.
And you know, what I mean, now it might not win you matches, right? Because of the way the advantages and the points and the lapels and all these things work now, it might not win, but it's still very transferable. Gi, no gi, IBJJF rules, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? So but so I still love the creative side of jiu-jitsu. Someone said to me once, they like something they're talking about art or music and blah blah blah, and they're like, yeah, Justin, you're an artist. I'm like, I'm not an artist. They're like, yeah, you're a martial artist.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, that makes sense. Like, there's real when it comes to that point. Like, how long have you done jiu-jitsu now? Like 15 years, like that, that long.
Around that. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. 14,
Yeah,
14.
right. So, and how many times, like, how much have you watched it evolve? You learned probably close guard, and then you started, and then eventually Eddie Bravo came along, and there's the rubber guard, and then there's and the De La Hiva, and every year, every 2 years, it changes what's popular over, and it all constantly reinventing itself. Now it's some the worm and all the new lapel stuff. It's always changing, but that's what makes it fucking awesome too,
Yeah,
right? So
the thing was with is that I was doing a lot of that shit before. There just wasn't a name to it. And then like
yeah,
and some guy or some really good guy went into some tournament, started trashing people with it, and then all of a sudden they got that name. So like there's like stuff like the worm guard, or like I play a lot of half guard, but then like
mhm,
I don't even know the fucking term. Someone was like, "You're doing this." I'm like, "I don't know what the fuck that is." I just put my shin there, and that's what I've been
yeah,
doing
yeah,
for 10 years. But it's got some new name because some guy did it. So I mean,
yeah,
the stuff that I've been doing hasn't changed. I've always stuck to me. It was always fundamentals, and even with the like it's the new style of jujitsu, like how I was taught was the Marcus Soros, Carlson Gracie smash
yeah.
stuff, and I found that smashing a lot of these new things works almost 98% of the time. And
It's yeah, yeah.
and
It's
so
they quit.
yes,
Like,
like so like
yeah,
while I do respect, like I think my biggest concern with my jiu-jitsu would be the whole leg lock thing with the Danaher
yeah,
thing. because that is just a whole nother intricate thing. I would have to spend hours and hours and hours really, really studying those positions, which I haven't done yet because it doesn't really go with my style, but I like to know it just in case. I don't want my knee ripped off, right? But
Yeah.
I find that using old school smashing style and just pasting and putting the body weight on guys when they're trying these really for their fun techniques for the most part because they look cool. Like when it's successful, it freaking looks cool. But if I smash you, it's gone, and then all of a sudden 3 minutes later, the breath increases, the energy goes down, and there goes the rubber slash worm slash
I
whatever the
I
fuck.
find I find that a lot as well. Like I said earlier, like these guys with the modern style, they use that stuff. I don't train it, but I learn it so I understand it.
Yeah,
And they said even if you catch me, like there's nothing that's a surprise to me anymore. You might have a new because what are we looking to do? Mount, take the back. You know what I mean? Like get dominant position. So like I don't know how you're. I know that when we get there, when you do take my back, okay, now I know what to do. Right?
yeah,
I don't have any idea what the fuck this kid just did to me. But once I get there, I'm
yeah,
gonna get out. Now you're fucking dead,
yeah.
right? So I do find with the more modern style, which I still love, that these guys are so focused on offense that once you crush it, they just deflate. Like I'll pass. Finally, take me a bit to figure it out, but then I want to finally pass and start leaning on a guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're quitters
yeah, I know.
because the I learned from Silvio Bearing and Shaw Franco. Like I learned like from the bottom, it's all don't let the guy touch your face. Close guard, tie him up. You'll
Yeah,
figure out and then wear him out and work your chokes and arms and hit the sweep and whatever else, right? And from the top position, it was like smash, nice and slow, smash to half, smash the side, knee on belly. If you follow the points traditional point system, you should be able to kill a guy, right?
the
So
the other part to
that's the way I look at it.
the other part to that too is like some of these newer techniques that come out. I find like say they're on top and you're on the bottom, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. I find going old school scrambling, just creating scrambles, kind of negates a lot of that too, because they're more that those kind of techniques are more dependent on the shock factor. Like, oh, I don't know what's happening, but then we create chaos, controlled chaos, and get into a scrambling kind of position, and all of a sudden he has to reset. It's almost like when
Yeah.
someone establishes a jab and they're like jabbing you, but all of a sudden, you interrupt the jab with your own jab, and then you're back to square one. So I find
Hmm.
like when I run into those kind of that style of jiu-jitsu, my best option is to create those scrambles and kind of create chaos and
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
challenge
I
him
agree.
that way.
Yeah, I have two ways I approach that when I get into some situation I'm not quite sure of is like the one thing I do pat myself on the back is like I'm a better even at almost 50, I'm still a better scrambler than anyone, and
Yeah,
that's because I did judo first. So I
yeah,
spent half my life upside down anyway, right? So 9 times out of 10, I'm like I'm not sure what's happened, so I'm just going to like not freak out, but there's obviously some planning to it, it's head and hips and whatever else, but like most of the time I'm going to come out ahead in a better position,
yeah,
right? Because I just been there more often. The other way that I approach these guys when they wrap something up or there's something weird going on and I don't know what it is, I'm like I kind of guess on what they want and I actually just kind of give it to them.
yeah,
And then they're like, then that because they have a system, they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4,
yeah.
right? I'm like, okay, I think you're going to do this, so I'll just give them step 3, and they're like, oh, and
That was
because they're confused because they didn't have to do step 1 and 2, so their system's fucked up.
yeah.
And then while they're thinking about what just happened, then I'm like, okay, then
Gotcha.
I'll create another script, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So like sometimes I just hand people what they want, and then once they get it, they don't know what to do with it, you know?
I know what you mean.
So
The one thing I wanted to ask you about is Hickson said it, and I wanted to get your opinion because you're obviously an OG and you're a seasoned black belt as well. Is he was talking about how in modern jiu-jitsu, like you get to class and instructor says roll, and one guy always concedes a position. So he either
mhm.
sits on his ass or he's standing up. Like you shake hands, one guy's playing guard, one guy's standing up. Whereas he was saying like traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they didn't do that. They actually either they started from their knees and they wrestled, or they started from standing and they wrestled for position.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is in Hickson's mind and what he sees in the development of jiu-jitsu is people end up going into competition and thinking that, a guard is an advantage position, which it really
Mm.
isn't. It's a guard is not where you want to be. You want to be on top.
Yeah.
Winning is done on top. It's not on the bottom. But I mean, nowadays you watch any jiu-jitsu match at a high level, somebody most of the time always just sits down, right? Because they
Yeah.
think the guard is great. So I wanted to know, like, if you what you think about that, because I tend to believe that too. It's something I try to avoid, but I also get caught up in that modern jiu-jitsu like
Yeah.
style where
So so I personally, again, I was a black belt in judo first. I think every fight, everything starts from two guys standing,
yeah,
right? You're never going to get a fight on the couch, man. Like everything starts from the standing position. So I think personally, in a perfect world, that's where we should all start. Traditional lapel grip. Let's go for throws or wrestle or whatever else. The problem with that is that's real, right? For competition or self defense. The problem with that is there's a higher percentage of injury,
yes,
right? When you start from that position, and 99% of us are just recreational,
yeah,
right? So it's bad for business. From you see it from the guy that owns the gym. If you got 30 guys in the room all stand up doing the same judo at the same time, you're going to lose a student that night,
yeah.
right? Because someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get landed on, and it's very scary for
Both
people
times
when
I
they don't
tore
know
my
how to do it.
ACL were from judo throws. So like,
Exactly, right?
yeah,
So, I would like every fight to start from that position, but it's just not realistic. Like because a lot of people, they're just not that committed. It's just a hobby,
yeah,
and for us, we have to protect our business and our students. So what I do is I'll let guys run drills and start matches from the standing and seated and whatever else. But when I run a class, because I stay away from the competition side of things, I'm like, okay, you can start wherever you want, but I want a realistic position. You're never going to fight from your knees. You're
yeah,
never going to right. I'm like, I can guarantee you, no matter where you start this match up, at some point you're going to end up a half guard. So
yeah,
starting half guard or
right,
starting mount. Start with like take a real position that's worth points, where that's likely to happen in a match, and that's where you start.
yeah.
And if you have an advanced student like a brown belt with a blue belt, I'm like, all right, brown belt. I'm like, let them have your back. Like, just start something, right? And for me, I always give the guy the dominant position because I want to work, right?
So
So
basically,
I
you
think,
think starting in a more realistic bad position, so to speak, or
mhm,
than just sitting down and like letting it
yeah,
play.
yeah, and because odds are that's good. I play the odds. I'm going to start in a position that it's probably going to happen in a match, right, or a real fight. But then, so you have to factor in that in sport jiu-jitsu, one guy up and one guy down is going to happen as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's also why, like, it's important to have the competition classes so guys can run those specific drills, right?
Drills. What do you think about jujitsu in the Olympics? Like Muay Thai just got approved. Karate had its first year. I'm skeptical about jujitsu in the Olympics, mainly because if you look at karate's first year, wasn't successful at all. Especially when you had, I don't know if you saw the gold medal one, where
Oh yeah,
he got knocked out with legitimate technique, got kicked in the face, knocked out, but it was like red card, that was too aggressive, you lose. Like, and then the guy
mhm.
walks on with a gold medal. So for me, because I love grappling, I love jujitsu so much, I feel like putting it on that stage might start watering it down a little bit just to make it more fan friendly. What do you think?
I I I don't think so. It's very possible. I don't think we'll ever go to the Olympics myself. It's not as big a sport as people think that it is. Like if you were looking at a global scale, judo's 100 times as big as jiu-jitsu is. You know what I mean? Because every country in the world plays judo at a massive level, except for us. Um, but and even with Muay Thai, I think now they've it's been accepted at some certain level or whatever else, and it's still going to take 3, 4 more Olympics probably before they even put it in for a test run. Like there's so much shit, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? I don't really know how it works, but uh, I think it's very possible that it could make it. But I'm skeptical, and I can guarantee you that the IBJJF probably doesn't want it to
No, because that
because
cuts into their profits for sure.
yeah, right, for sure. Like all these because the major Olympic sports. There's you know what they're all non-profit, not for profit organizations. Like that's why you don't pay for judo. You don't pay for wrestling. These, you know what I mean? You go to a judo club or a wrestling club or whatever else. Like they're all, you go to a Team Impact or whatever it's called now, that's a $300 a year membership. And that just pays for the building that you're training in. Or you know what I mean? Like they're all,
Yeah.
but jiu-jitsu is marketable, fan friendly, and it's fashionable. And that's probably the way they get, and there's the IBJJF keeps it that way. And yeah, and if you go to the Olympics, there'll be drug testing, and we
Yeah.
can't have that if you're going to do jiu-jitsu. So, because fucking, I don't care what anyone says, man. Masters division and IBJJF, those guys are terrifying. They look scarier than the guys in like adults, and I'm like, that's not. They're not eating moose meat, man. Like
Yeah,
those guys, they're
they're,
geared to
they're on some of the
shit.
Mexican supplements.
Yeah, for sure, for
My
sure.
concern with it is if it does get to the Olympics, I don't know if I forgot who he was fighting in that match, but if Jacare was fighting somebody, and he got his arm broke, right?
It was Rod. Yeah, it was Hodge Gracie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he got his arm broke, and then he fucking tucks it in his belt. Then he goes and he continues, and he ends up winning the match, right? Like my
Mm-hmm.
concern is like if you really want, to me, that's a real jiu-jitsu fight. Like
Mm-hmm.
if it gets to the Olympic level, like when the arm breaks, they'll stop it. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, I want to see more, but that's just me being selfish. But like I
Mm-hmm.
like that like to me that was the definition of like a hard fought real like you can, even though he broke his arm, he can go home and be like I'm the fucking champ after winning that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, he stayed within the rules of the match, and he won. Like, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to continue. Very few people would. Jacare is a different animal, right? But yeah, so I'm not sure how if that was like under a different federation or an Olympic like jurisdiction. I don't know how that. Yeah, if they would have like stopped him or whatever else, I don't know how that would work.
I
But
would suspect they would stop him because like that would be like, oh, it's too brutal. This is on NBC. We don't want, you know what I mean?
yeah, who knows? I don't know. That's the thing too. Is but the way things are going too is like the world loves violence, man. Right? So but it's so you can see it going the other way as well. Like I don't know. Um, that's thing that judo's been in the Olympics for decades and decades and decades, but they change the rules all the time to make it more. That's the problem too. So I think that's where you're going. Is judo has changed its rules consistently for decades to make it more spectator friendly,
Yes.
right? And that's very possible that the same thing could happen with jiu-jitsu. Or the problem is like it's not. The truth is, unless there's someone like you or me, like jiu-jitsu just isn't fan friendly. No, why would anyone watch it? Like
No.
we understand what's going on, but even in an MMA match, people still boo jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
and they kind of have a clue. The most of the world doesn't know what the fuck jiu-jitsu is. They're like, "What is this? What's he even doing?" Right? So it's hard to watch.
If I was to film all of my roles, you would just think it's a brown guy lying on top of somebody. Because
Yeah,
I'll just sit there for 3.5 minutes and realize, oh, I got one more minute. Then I'm gonna move just because of how I strategize my.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's not a fan.
yeah.
Like nobody wants to
Oh,
watch.
no,
Nobody wants to.
not at all. So if you think about judo and jiu-jitsu, like this is what I believe, and I think it's legit because I have a black belt in both. I'm like, it's really the same martial art. It's just different rules,
Yeah.
right? So traditional judo, like if you watch judo in the Olympics 40 years ago, it looked way more like jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
because right. So, but now they changed the rules and the grips and the time on the ground. Like if you don't have a submission or something technique on, like in transition when you hit the floor, they stop it and stand it up.
Yeah.
Right. And when jiu-jitsu is the exact opposite, the fight doesn't even start until you hit the ground.
Hit the ground. Yeah.
Right. You're right. So, but if you, man, Shijikatami is armbar, just how you want to say it. Like all of our techniques are practically the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
It's just one's up here and one's down there. The points are different. That's
yeah.
all.
So I mean, only time will tell. But also too, there's the factor too that some guys are getting paid now. Like, and
Yeah.
if we get like when you think of the Olympics, you think about you want to see the best of the best at that level, right? And the Gordon Ryans, the guys that are like at the top of the game, they're not going to want to compete for free anymore because of the amount of time and effort they put in, and
Hmm.
they're getting paid. The Olympics won't do that. You might get some sponsorship deals here or there, but I mean, it
Yeah,
to those guys, I don't think that really matters right now.
yeah. Well, what like you take anyone and offer money to do or do it for free. Like, why would you? It's
Yeah,
just something that's always confused me though. It's like now it's amateur sport, but look at basketball,
yeah, no,
hockey. They're all professional players. You know
soccer,
what I mean?
soccer too.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's like you can't you're not getting paid for that event. I don't know how it works because like I took my kid not last year, I guess shit, it's 2 years ago now. My one of my students, my fighters, James Clark, we went to Singapore for the Worlds and for MMA like Gamma World Championships, and he'd already but the rules are they're like they're amateur rules.
Yeah,
And that's it. Everyone there was like pro. Like
it,
James's division had 16 guys with 150 pro fights between all of them. You know what I mean? Like it's just the rule set was different. That's all.
so yeah, that makes no sense. Like
Yeah. So
they're supposed to be amateur athletes, but then they do that with the NBA and the guys bringing in, so it makes it kind of weird. I guess
right.
it's more of
Yeah.
the prestige
But
of winning the Olympics than anything. I guess, right?
yeah. So did you fight any amateur MMA at all, or did you just go pro?
I did. I fought amateur. Yeah,
Where did you fight amateur?
I fought mostly in Ohio, and I did one in Pittsburgh, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. So I can't I've only done AMI in like in the States and like New York and stuff. But what was your shin guards?
For the Pennsylvania one, yes. And that
Okay,
was
but Ohio was no
Ohio was
shin,
the West. They didn't give a
slow,
uh,
right? Exactly, and you weren't paid, but it was pro rules.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah,
You just couldn't I don't think you could elbow. You couldn't elbow, but you can
yeah,
knee. You could do everything else.
yeah. And New York was like you couldn't no elbows and no heel hooks or something like that, right? Which I get for at an amateur level. You don't want to cut guys. You don't want to wreck some weekend warrior's knee,
Yeah.
right? Because he's just trying to. But what's the difference between amateur and the pro then, right?
Oh,
Nothing.
oh,
You don't one gets paid, the other guy gets gives it away for free.
the fight I had in Pennsylvania, it was a big piss off because I was supposed to fight somebody, and you know how like people always drop out, right? So the guy drops
Mm-hmm.
out. We didn't even know he dropped out. I was at work, the job I was at there, and I was sitting on the toilet in my break time, and I'm looking at the card, and I'm like, well, holy fuck, that's not the guy I was supposed to fight. And then we call the promoter, like, oh yeah, he dropped out, so we put another guy in. But he didn't have enough experience according to their amateur rules, so it went from being a regular amateur fight to this like special rules amateur fight where
Yeah, right.
you have to wear shin guards and there's no ground and pound to the head. And so at that time, I fought some brown belt guy who's pretty like he had some grappling matches against Tom the Blast and a couple of really good
Mm-hmm.
guys. And I'm like, whatever, I'll fight him. But I ended up losing the fight by a split decision. But it was bullshit because if I could have hit him in the face,
Yeah, changes everything.
it would have been over. There was tons of positions where I had to just hit him in his body because there's no ground and pound to the head, and he was gassed, and I would have finished him. So like the rule set screwed me out of a win, right? So like I hate when they do those kind of things. Like I would love for there just to be a universal amateur rule
There
set and a
there should
universal
be.
rule set
There
at this
there
point
should be.
because we've
I
been.
liked
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I like so that's why I like New York's amateur rules. They were like they took away the really dangerous shit, but they still put you in there with 4 ounce gloves and no shins to see if you really like you shouldn't do any more than like 5 amateur fights. I think because like if amateurs just to decide if you want to do it or not. These guys that are just training 3 days a week and showing up on the weekends and doing it for the fuck of it, like I get it in a way, but like it's dangerous and you're taking away from the guys that really want to get it done.
Yeah,
So I think for amateur, like amateur or just to decide if you really want to do the work. And then after that, you find out if you're good enough to be a pro, right? If you're 0 and 5 as an amateur, stop.
yeah.
You know what I
But
mean? Like,
do you think that that's the reason why there's, in my opinion, I don't think it'll ever happen. There'll never be like a fighters union or union.
it, we'll never have a fighters union because the UFC has a monopoly on mixed martial arts,
Yeah,
and it does. So it's never going to happen. I don't think boxing has a union. Like
no,
no one's got a union, right? And like and when there's no profit sharing, like they don't give a fuck, man. Like the UFC has monopoly. If you ask 9 people out of 10 what mixed martial arts is, they can't tell you. But if you ask them what the UFC is, they know exactly
You
what
know
it is,
exactly. Yeah.
right? And that it sucks because, but that's just the way it is. And good because they built the brand, they built the sport, but like they're never going to let it happen. Like no other professional sports organization in the world has such a shitty, uh, like profit sharing like
Wow.
percentage with
Yeah.
their athletes. It's crazy, right? They're group and people are going to do it. If you don't fight for 10 grand, the next guy will do it for 5, right? So, and because most people don't know what they're watching anyway, they couldn't tell you the difference between a top 20 guy and a top 10 guy.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're seeing,
Well,
right?
also
So
too, I find it too because of what you said about like the amateur guys, and you have those weekend warriors that get in there, and they're like, so those guys get pro licenses, and they
yeah, I
end up
know.
fighting, and so you have a guy who's maybe like 5-20, right, and he's always on whatever show, but he's 5-20, and then in my opinion, like I've yet to lose as a pro, and there's tons of pros who have maybe just one loss and tons of wins. I don't feel like I should get paid way more than that fucking guy, right?
Hmm.
Like I take it seriously. The other guys take it seriously. The guy he just wants a couple $100. He wants to go on vacation, so he hops in the cage. So in my like, this is me as a selfish fighter speaking. I would be like, well, no, I can promote a fight. I can talk my shit. I can put butts in the seats. That guy's just here because he wants a couple bucks.
He's a filler. Yeah. Um, yeah, that shit's hard for me to swallow, right? But there's it's always going to be the way of the world, man. Like those guys bring their own fans, and then we beat them up. I guess you know what I mean. It does suck because these guys. We just fought down at B2, which is down in Kentucky, and
Yeah,
fucking
good.
good show. Yeah, really cool show. It's a pro am. They know how to do it. They run 50 shows a year, and they fill them up with all amateurs and the regional amateurs, and they have 3 pros on it, right? So amateurs pay for the event, and they make enough money to pay the pros. And the quality of fighters was pretty decent, and it was. But yeah, these guys all down in the Midwest and the kind of the mid South. I had James in there. He defended his championship, but when he won it, James is 6-2 as a pro, and he fought a guy with 60 fights. You know what I mean? And he winning record,
Yeah,
right? But the guy had 60 fights. I'm like, they shouldn't even be in the same
category basically.
yeah, right. But it's just the way it is, and I don't know. But yeah, I guess we're saying the same thing. It's like we're pros, we're snobs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm a pro. I take this fucking seriously. I work this job 6 days a week and put everything into it. Why the fuck should you be able to even taste this glory? You know what I mean? Like
So do you think
because
the only way, in your opinion, is to get a fighters union is to be more stringent on get licensing for pros?
I think it should be. I think it should be a lot more difficult to get a license. I know boxing is really hard to get a boxing license,
Yeah.
depending on the province and state. But like, you got to perform as an amateur, and you have to perform in front of people who are going to give you that license,
Yeah.
right? Like, I never had an amateur fight. There was pro. That was it,
Yeah.
right? And but most states and provinces, like you just pay your licensing fee and then you can fight. That's it,
Mhm.
as long as you pass your meds, right? And I don't think it should be like that. I don't think you should have to be like a 20-0 amateur to be a pro, but there should be some level
Uh,
of skill involved in you getting out there because it takes away from the guys who are actually pros and take it seriously. And someone's gonna fucking die, man. Like, how
I-
you letting a guy in the ring that's fucking got 2 wins and 15 losses? That guy's gonna die when
yeah.
he runs into that kid who's the next fucking like killer, like the next St. Pierre, the next guy. He's gonna get hurt real bad, man.
Yeah.
And it's because there is no criteria, right?
Yeah. Speaking of St. Pierre, that's one of the things I've always wanted to ask you. You're one of the few humans on the planet who's gotten the chance to. Well, I guess he's a Hall of Famer now, right?
Yep.
Um, what was that experience like? Being able to
Uh,
share that, just share that experience with him, regardless of the outcome.
Oh, I don't give a fuck about the outcome. That fight was the most important fight in I was one of the most important fights of my life, and I remember, like I said, I was champion before I fought him, and so he took the belt from me. We didn't know much about him because just back then there wasn't all that much tape or internet and whatever else. I'm like, I was a champ. I had to fight whoever they put in front of me, and I got this big stud young kid from Montreal, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And it was a short fight, man. Like there was, I thought all I knew that he was like a good kickboxer, and so I kind of trained to like go take him down and put the beating on him because I had good jiu-jitsu and judo and whatever else. And first thing he did, come out and just put shot a double and put me on my ass, and I was like, I that whole training camp, I'm like, fuck me, I never thought once this guy was going to try to take me down, and it's
Yeah,
the first thing he did. And I remember he sat me down. I was like, shit, or fuck, or something. I swore because it was not like I wasn't hurt. I was just like, holy shit, I did not see that coming.
yeah,
And then he just crushed me. I got to my feet and there was like one little scramble. I had him like up in the air for a second. Like I had this one patented 50-50 throw I do. And he kind of was like a cat and came back down. And then he put me down again. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like he grabbed me and I felt like a fucking child. Like
yeah,
I just knew as soon as he flattened me, I was like, I'm fucked. And then he bounced my head off the mat. Like he just fucking pummeled me. And like I say this all the time. There was people like, oh, it would have been, if this happened this time. Like, dude, he beat me 100 out of 100 times. He's the best fighter in history. Like,
yeah.
I don't make excuses. At the time, I'm like, oh, I had shit training or this or that. But I'm like, no, man.
He's
There's just people that are better than you, and everyone has to accept that. And that guy was, and he kept getting better and better and better and better. And he's probably the greatest in history now. And I'm like, man, that fight, I was, like I said, I'm going to lose every single time, but I was a champion. And I had, a little bit of fame, and I was pretty comfortable and confident, whatever else. And
yeah,
like, yeah, maybe the training wasn't as, it's always hard to train when you're a champion, man. When you're chasing the belt, it's easy
yeah.
as shit, right?
I
And
know.
that kid came in hungry and just kicked shit out of me and took it from me. And but after that matchup, I sulked for a while and whatever else, and I realized, you know what, that guy was huge because I didn't cut any weight,
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, I got to, if you're gonna do this, you got to buckle down. And I had to drop a weight class and like really up my training and think that more of as a professional. Like back then, we were still figuring it out, right? There wasn't all these. There were so many things we didn't know, but I'm like,
it
okay,
was
if you're gonna make a run, you got to. Pardon me?
still the Wild West back then. Like there was still
Oh, very, very much so. Yeah,
yeah,
there was only 3 or 4 weight classes when we started. So, but that fight, I lost that fight, and I was like, I'm undersized. I got to go down to 155. So I figured out how to cut weight, make it to 155, and then I was competitive then. And then, like I never got to win another championship because I left TKO because they were scumbags. But
yeah,
I got to go to Shudo, which was my dream come true. Like because the only other Canadians to do Shudo ever were Omar, Carlos, and Joel.
Joel Gerson. Yeah,
And yeah, and I think maybe there's a couple guys on the West Coast, but like going as a 155er, if you fought in Shudo, like that's where you wanted to go. So I fought Shudo Vancouver, and then the Japanese watched me fight, and I knocked my guy out like quick, and they picked me up and they flew me over there, and I fought a top 10 guy, and I kicked the shit out of him, and then and which put me like in the top 10. I was ranked at number 9 in the world, and so like for me, then I got injured after that. My career
yeah.
was over anyway. But like none of that would have happened if George didn't kick my ass. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like so. Well, people were like, "It's yeah, man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and like, it was a true blessing to be in the cage with that guy. Like I'm part of his. He helped form me as a person and a fighter and a man, but like I got to be a part of his legacy too. It's funny when they play his Hall of Fame highlight reel, it shows him armbarring me. I'm like, yes, I made it. So
When I did my training camp in Arizona after I tore my ACL, I bought his book to read while I was there because I knew I would have it. And then he was in the book. It talked about you. I'm like, I know him.
yeah, right on.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
I know him. But yeah,
he's the nicest dude in the world, man. He's such a nice, kind guy. Like he's a good dude. So
but like you were saying after, like it's those losses that really bring out the man in you, so to speak. Because like
yeah,
um Coach Chris Bonfocal can attest to this. Like my first amateur fight, I got knocked the fuck out. Like I'm
Mm,
comfortable. Like I couldn't talk about this like 6 years ago, but now like I'm older and more mature, and I can reflect properly. I got knocked the fuck out, and it wasn't because I was a bad fighter or whatever. He was a better guy that night, straight up. But I made a lot of critical errors before I even got in the cage,
mm,
and the only way for me to mature as a human being, forget fighter, just as a human being, was for that to happen. But like most people would quit after that. Like your first experience in mixed martial arts is waking up on a stretcher, right?
yeah.
But for me, I got home, I didn't even have a second thought. It was just let me just heal, let me get better, and I got right back in the gym. Later on that year, I was fine. I fought and I won, and I knew I'm like, okay, this is the kind of thing I want to do. Like mixed martial arts still scares the shit out of me. Like
Oh my God, yeah.
there's nothing like it's funny I say this, like it's something I don't want to do, but I have to do. Right?
Mm,
Even if I was to never compete again, I have to train because the craziness of the situations that scare the shit out of me. But then when I'm done, I'm like, whew, okay, come on,
oh
world, yeah.
yeah.
Look, I can,
I love fighting. I'm terrified of it. But I love it. I love doing it. It's fun.
yeah, and
Everything about it.
I tell this to everybody. Like clients ask me, like, what goes through your mind when you're about to walk out? I'm like, I'm scared of shit. I'm like, I'm about to get in a fist fight. What the fuck do you think? Like my last fight
Hmm.
for King of the Cage, there was a whole bunch of confusion. They had the wrong tape on the gloves, and so one song was going on. They're like, stop, and there's all this confusion. So then, by the time I get in the cage, I'm already cold, right?
Hmm.
And there's this. Here's the story about this guy. When we watched the tape, like I always make my wife watch the tape, right? And I'm like, babe, should I take this fight? And she'd be like, yeah. So I showed her the tape. She's like, Ashton, this guy's fat as shit. You can beat the shit out of him. Take the fight. When I got to the weigh-ins, the motherfucker was ripped. He had like
Hmm.
abs on his forehead. He was fucking just jacked, right? I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then the fight happened. Like, the ref is like, fight. This guy sprints towards me. All of a sudden, I have to be like, dude, this is real now. There's no going away. Like, but that's when the fear goes away. Like when that
Yeah.
moment happens, when he's running toward, like this guy literally sprinted towards me from the other side of the cage. King of the Cage is a small cage, so
Oh yeah.
it wasn't like I had like 6 seconds to react. I had 1 second to react and be like, Ashton, you're in a fucking fight now. Shut up and nut up, bitch. It's time to go. Right?
Yeah.
But up until that very moment, I'm scared as shit. Like
Yeah. Oh man, I never had a fight where I didn't cry first. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Where's the door? And then for me, I'm like, it's not when the bell rings. It's the first collision. After the first collision, then you're cool. It's like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And then so as someone throws and you don't even necessarily land. It's like that first, like, okay, let's do it. And
yeah,
then everything just goes. Then you just go on cruise control because
yeah, exactly.
you've trained it, right? It just whatever happens after that happens. You just make decisions, split second decisions. But yeah, it's the first collision, and then after that, you just okay, let's just enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
So
And then it's only good for like 5 seconds after the fight. Because like one of the worst questions I get, like you go in, you put in months of training, you fight for a shitty paycheck, then you're like, okay, I can relax for a little bit. And then the first question be, when's your next fight? I'm like, I just fucking got out of there. Can it
mhm.
be a normal human for like 3 days before he asks me
Yeah.
when's my next fight? You know what I mean?
Uh, I need to go into like a serious depression for about 3 4 weeks, reel myself back together, and then you can ask me that
Yeah,
question. It's
yeah,
like that crash afterwards is awful every time. Like I hate it, man. Like it because the high is so high, and when you're done, like you eat and drink, and you kind of feel shitty, and then like fighting is the only thing in my head ever in my life that makes sense to me. And then so like when I'm in there and it's happening, like I'm at peace. And
yeah,
then it's over, and then you're like, oh, and like I plummet like hard, man. I'm not easy to get along with after I fight. And
yeah,
then that's the problem with retirement is I haven't figured that part out yet, like what makes me happy afterwards, right? Because like the best part about when you're fighting is it sucks when people say, "Hey, when's your next one?" Because, but the truth is, yeah, there's always a next
yeah,
one, right? So there's something to look forward to, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, whatever else. But then you're like, I got to fight. Okay, boom, everything makes sense.
yeah.
It's easy to get out of bed. It's easy to eat the right things. it's easy to get on the road and hit the weights and do all the things like all that shit. Life is works easy. Everything's just easy if you have a fight.
Yeah.
I like I got I retired from fighting and I had and developed insomnia like overnight.
Yeah.
Like and then until 3 years ago, I accepted a fight in Thailand.
That's what I was about to ask you.
So slept this 8 hours a night every single night for 3 months and 3 months because I knew I was going to fight.
Yeah.
And then I fucking then I fought and went into a crazy depression again and fucking because you got nothing to look forward to afterwards. It's
What's
hard.
what sparked that? Like you after all those years of being off and teaching and all that, what kind like I know you it was like you mentioned it before when I talked to you, it was like a personal challenge you kind of wanted to do.
Yeah, I always there's a lot of reasons for that. Like number one, beyond anything, and it's kind of cliche, but we all say it. But I'm a fucking fighter. It's the
Yeah.
only thing only thing I've ever known how to do. The only thing I've been good at, and it's only time that anything makes sense. So to live without that for me is really, really hard. But
Yeah.
injuries and all these things they add up, and I'm just like I'm not, and I just couldn't do MMA anymore. And then so kind of what happened, I met a few different people. Like our alliance started to build with all the different gyms, and like so I became really good friends with Matt Kendall and Brendan Kaljundik and all these great kickboxers and whatever else. I started training more and more and more, and then I'm just like, man, I think I could fucking try this. And then I walked into a smoker, and they're like, "You want to fight someone?" I'm like, "Yup." So I did a smoker one night,
Yeah.
and I ran a marathon. I had a marathon scheduled the next morning. I ran that too, and then there was an opportunity to come up. There was a rec MMA in Oshawa, and they're like, "Do you want to fight on this? We'll make it a like
Okay.
Dutch rules, like K1 rules." So I'm like, we can call an exhibition. You don't need any. I'm like, yeah, get me someone. I'll fight him. So I fought a guy from Ottawa, and it was why that's what's really really got me into it because I never fought in front of my friends before. I had to travel. I've never had there was no fighting here, right? So I fought like 2 kilometers from my house in our local, like the Polish hall where everything goes down in our city. And in front of all my friends and family, my fucking parents got to see me fight for the first time. And, uh, it was an exhibition match
Yeah.
and it was the greatest night of my life because I got people actually finally got to see what I do, and it was something that, to me I love to learn.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I don't want to I don't want to do kickboxing for MMA. I'm like, teach me how to kickbox. So every week I'd meet with Kendall or Brendan and like teach me how to kickbox, and I'm like, okay, now I want to go try it, right? And then I did that, and then I was talking to Jovan. He's one of my coaches, and he's over in Thailand. He's like, you want to really do one, you should probably come here. I'm like, that's the dumbest idea ever. And I was talking to Brendan, I'm like, do you want to go to Thailand? He's like, yup. I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. So same thing. I'm like, I got to do this. I got to do this. And then when I say it out loud, I'm like, we're doing it. And then that was, so I'm like, I got to learn how to Thai box. And it came with a lot of limitations for me because I can't clinch. I have no neck.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, how am I going to Thai box without getting into a clinch? And that, believe it or not, is jiu-jitsu saves me because jiu-jitsu always gives you a place to hide.
Yes.
Right. You want to clinch with me? I'm ducking under. I'm taking your back. I'm just going to sit there.
Yeah.
Right, and they're going to split us. So like, I always knew I could hide somewhere. So I figured out the rule set for the most part. And I'm not a clinch guy. And I'm not a big boxer or a kicker, but I'm a puncher, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, if we're just where the Thai style, they're not as good punchers. So I'm like, I know what we got to do. We're gonna throw fucking
Got to punch
cross hook uppercuts, yeah. And so I was like, I checked kicks for a year. Went over there, didn't check one kick, but that shin on shin, it was like the worst, right? And then, but yeah, I just had one of those nights where like they lined this kid up, and I was like, and you just go and you fucking fight. And that was such a beautiful thing to me because I didn't know how many people, I didn't know I would have that kind of support because I never had that support in my life through my career. No one even understood what I did. But like that fight cost tens of thousands of dollars to make happen. Like with travel and training and running the gym, and like people don't send me money and GoFundMe and all this shit. Like it was nuts how many people, and then how many people actually sat and watched it and cheered me on. It was like, it was the best. And like, yeah, I'm in my mid 40s, you know what I mean? I'm like, and like I fought some kid who was 7-1 and I knocked the shit out of him. And I just never felt so good. Like it never, I mean, it just felt like I brought the whole city, the whole country with me. It was the best feeling in the world, right? To go show off what I learned, So
Now,
I
like
just love it.
one of the things I've only got to compete in North America, but like you got to compete in different parts of the world. What would like,
Mhm.
Japan and Thailand are two of the places I would love to compete in, or just be able to watch it there. What would you say is the biggest difference between the competitions you had in Japan and Thailand compared to like the US and North America and Canada?
Um, I love I love fighting in Japan because they just you watched Pride and all the big shows. You're like, it's just quiet
That's
because
what
they understand.
yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. They understand what they're watching, and it doesn't have to be a big punch or anything like that. When they see something that's good, they're just like, "Hey, that was cool!" Like I really, really like that, and so that was nice. Like, but I like Thailand because it's like you're just almost like I didn't know who. So Japan, I study and tape in my gut for like 2 months. I
Yeah.
know who I'm fighting, when I'm fighting in the car, what time of day, whatever else. I know everything about it, and I prep and I go get it done. Thailand, my preparation's the same. I train like I'm gonna die no matter what.
Yeah.
But you get there, and I'm like, I'm looking around. I'm like, well, that's the biggest guy here. I think I'm fighting him.
Yeah.
And like, sure shit, I'm fighting a 6 foot tall Thai kid. You know what I mean? You don't, it's almost like you're going to get a fight at the bar. You don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Right. And then everyone's just betting and it's loud and it's crazy and whatever else. So like, I really like both of those because culturally, like Japanese do it one way. The Thais is just nothing to those guys.
Yeah.
That's just what they do all day, every
That's a
single
sad
day. So it's like,
guys.
it's and that here it's still kind of a freak show here.
Yes.
Like I don't care what you know what I mean. It's still that sports entertainment, just bleed kind of thing, which I kind of like too. You know what I mean? But I like all sides of that. But like I think I don't think you can be. Me personally, fighting in Japan was a dream for me, and I got to fight in Kurokian Hall, which is like fucking mind blowing. Every show ever and every fighter ever fought there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was like one thing I wanted to do in my life, and I think that would be my first pick to fight ever. Is like anywhere again would be there. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that would be one I would want to cross off my bucket list if the opportunity came. Only because
Mm,
when I reevaluate some of the competitions I did have, some of the fights I did have, like there was the one with that guy where he had abs on his forehead. He was fucking jacked. He, I talked to him after the fight, and he said he watched my other fights and he didn't want to get kicked, so he thought he would clinch me. So he was clinching the whole time, and I was just a better clincher because I went back, jujitsu, and I was so the fight almost had to be boring because he made it that way, right? Uh,
hmm
and but then that's not my fault. As
Yeah.
like that's like when I like the person who I always talk to is my wife because she knows me the best. She's like, no, you did what you had to do. You won, right? And because when I was in the cage, I could hear people like semi booing because I'm like, well, he's trying to clinch me, and I'm just reversing this position and beating him up in the same position he wanted to be in, right? Why would I change that? That's what he
hmm
did. I'm not. My job is here to win. But like if and now when I switch those roles, and I think if that fight was in another country, like if that was in Japan or Thailand or something, like they would have a bigger appreciation for how I approached that because I took the
Yeah.
puzzle that was the puzzle, and that was what he wanted to do, and I beat him in his own game,
Well,
right?
that's it. You can only beat a guy with the opportunities that he presents for you, right? So if he doesn't want to stand, you can't hit a guy that doesn't want to fight you back.
Yeah,
It's impossible. He's going to tie you up or he's going to run, right? So if you don't have two people willing to exchange, it's just not going to. It's not an exchange. It's not going to happen, right? So you do your job. People get caught up in that shit. Like it sucks for the fans because they don't know what they're watching. Your job and your job only is to fucking win.
yeah,
That's it,
at all costs.
right?
Like, it doesn't matter if
Yeah,
it's boring. It doesn't matter if it's exciting. At the end of
yeah,
the day, your job is to leave in one piece if you can with the W
yeah,
under your belt. Whether it's
yeah. Absolutely.
ugly, like if it's beautiful, so be it. Like when Donald Cerrone knocked out Rick Story with that like amazing
Yeah,
combo, and it looked like a video game
yeah.
combination.
I know.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it just falls; those pieces fall in, and you see magic. Or like when when Anderson front kicked Vitor at the Kingdom Come, like that's just magic. But like then you have Anderson versus Damian Maya, which was a shit show, right?
Yeah,
Like, but that was the opportunity that he was presented. So like, what are you gonna do? It was his job
yeah,
to win, and he won, right?
yeah. That's hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just because they don't. Like I said, we've done this a dozen times. They just don't know what they're watching, right? So
So
it's all they're all not always going to be home runs, man. Like you got to win.
in the landscape of MMA and fighting now, like uh, we have both ends of the spectrum. You have like the Conor McGregors who are great talkers, and then you have the skill guys like Kamaru Usman, who doesn't really talk too much, but just an incredible athlete. Do you think that this sport is going to continue to evolve? Mixed martial arts.
Man, yeah, I think there's we still haven't come close to seeing the biggest freaks yet. And now guys they're not just creative with their yeah, Usman, if you watch him, he boxes like a boxer. He's
Yeah,
amazing. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, I love the way he fights. That's why everyone brings a different style, and then they got to solve the puzzle, right? But now these guys, because the money's getting better, the athletes are getting better, the technique's getting better. Now people are starting to use their environment. Like when Anthony Pettis jumped off the cage and did that fucking kick, that changed everything,
Oh,
right?
for
Because
sure.
now people are starting to figure out how to use the cage more and be more creative in their techniques and this and that. Like they're making it flashier and like Superman's off the wall and this and backflips and all sorts of shit. Like they're making it. I don't think we're even close to seeing like the
Potential.
real freaks yet. Yeah.
What do you think about when guys like Jake Paul and Logan Paul come along and they do hop into boxing and that splash that they're creating?
I'm okay with it now. So I have a hard time with it because I understand boxing and the elite and the amount of work that goes into it. But
Yeah.
and I'm like, it just what sucks is like these guys, these stars, and these people like, oh, he's a great boxer. It's like, no, he's not. But it's okay. All I look at it like this. I just want to see who wins a boxing match between Paul and Woodley. I'm not calling either one of them great boxers.
Yeah.
Right. So, but Brad, they're just going to have a boxing match to see who's better at
Yeah.
boxing. So if you got to stop looking at it like it's just like it's actually boxing. You just look at it like who would win in a boxing match, right? People were like, "Oh, he's got really good jiu-jitsu. He's got really good wrestling." I'm like, I wonder who would win in a boxing match. That's all. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I'm like, who would win between this guy and this guy? Like, of course, if he fights anyone good, he's gonna get fucking lynched.
Yeah.
He's a decent boxer. The kid, all he does is train with world class boxers. Of course,
Yeah.
he's gonna be good,
He's a
right?
good athlete, and I don't hate him for what he's done. Like, if you can make money because
Yeah,
the
doing what he
opportunity,
likes to do.
yeah, the opportunity might not be there in 3 years. Like, so
Yeah,
who knows what's gonna happen in life? You might get hurt, or just life might take you another direction. So I'm
yeah.
not hating
But
on.
they're raising the bar financially for people,
Yeah,
right? So now people are like, this fucking YouTube star isn't even a very good boxer, and he's getting paid this much money. That actually gives us a little bit more bargaining power,
leverage.
right?
Yeah,
Of course, he's bringing the viewers, right? You can't argue with that, right? So of course he's going to get paid more money, but it really does up the scale for guys who are actually pros. And like I said, it's just sports entertainment. Doesn't matter if it's a figure skater and a hockey player. Let's see who wins in a boxing match. That's all. It's just putting a rule set in between two different dudes and be like, try this and let's see who wins. Right?
my only concern is that it might set like a dangerous precedent to some other people, like that anybody can just do it at that level.
That's the problem, right? You see these little things popping up now, and guys are getting hurt real bad.
Yeah,
Like Paul knocked out that basketball player, and like there's guys again going back to the getting a professional boxing license, right? Like you shouldn't. There's
he
got
should
to be more
have a license.
stipulations.
Yeah, there's no way that
Yeah,
guy should have got a license. He was what was it, Nate Robinson or whatever the hell.
yeah, yeah.
There's
He almost died.
yeah, like that to me that was criminal because when that happened, that you could get like people dying in that fucking ring, like that you
Mhm.
could die in there, and like to put somebody with what maybe like 1 year of experience in there because some YouTube star wants to beat him up. To me, that's irresponsible on the commission's part. I get the
I,
money.
I I agree. I agree, and that's why you're going to see a lot of these fights take place in states with real laxed
Yeah.
commissions, right?
Well,
So
there's quite a few of those around there, right?
yeah, the U.S. is crazy like that, right?
Well, I think that fight might have been in Ohio or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it was. It was
I fought
Cleveland.
in
Yeah,
Ohio. Ohio's like I fought in a barn in Ohio. Like that's like
yeah.
they sanction shit in a barn. Like my music was playing and I was outside the barn peeing because I have to pee. I get nervous bladder, so I always have to pee before a fight, and it's not real pee. But like they're like, Ashton, get back in the barn. You got to fight. I'm like, okay, fine, okay. Let me go.
We did the same thing. We fought in a place called Hicksville, Ohio, and it was in like a metal shed at the fairgrounds in a steel cage. It's insane.
Yeah, and but Americans love that shit. Like
Yep.
the one thing I gotta say about well, I do love America, but the one thing I say about American fans is that they do love a Canadian fighter because
Oh yeah.
every time I've been down there and I've won most almost all my fights, but every time we've been down there, I talk to the fans after, like, man, we bought tickets because we knew the Americans, or we knew the Canadians were coming to beat up the Americans. We wanted to see the Canadians fight. So like that's the one thing I know about Americans is they do know Canadians when they come to scrap, and they actually
Yeah.
they do buy tickets just to see some Canadians beat the shit out of their own guys. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny that they do
Yeah.
that all the time.
It is fun because I was just there last weekend fighting, and it is crazy like that. They American, a lot of Americans, they don't even think we're real. You know what I mean? We're like unicorns to those guys, like because they don't have a very small percentage of Americans have passports, right?
Yeah.
And we're very international with our travel and stuff like that. So like Americans would never come here. You
No.
know what I mean? We always just go down there. So when they see us, they're like, "Oh, you're from Canada? Oh, okay, near Toronto? Yeah, that's close enough. Sure, whatever." They know where Toronto is and they know where Vancouver is, kind of,
Yeah.
right? So but yeah, it's funny. Last weekend we're there, and because it was a pro-am, all the amateurs sell the tickets, and when they fight, all their friends and fans leave, right? So we're the main event
Yeah.
in this place, and there's probably 15 people there for the live show, and then like we sold more pay-per-views than there was people in the stands, and there's still 10 of them up like USA, USA. And I'm like, oh, they're patriotic, and then we shit kick the guy anyway,
Yeah.
right? So
Well,
put
like
him to sleep.
I like when back in the day when Chris was still coaching and we had that team from Niagara and we would go down. He would get like five of us on a card, and very rarely would we come back home where it wasn't 100% victory. Like
Yeah, they got different standards to who's going to fight down there as well, too, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, you could let's be honest, at the amateur level, especially, you can handpick some of those fights down there.
Oh my God, you go fight a bowling alley any night. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's some guys that should have no business being in there. But man, like, I always look at those fights. Like, I look at someone for one of my guys. I'm like, we should murder this guy. But we're still training to fight the best guy in the world. Like, the fights are you gotta practice training camps just like anything else, right? So you go treat. It doesn't matter who you're competing against. Your training camp has to be badass, right? So it's just an opportunity to train properly and then go murder the guy in 10 seconds. It happens.
Yeah. Now, like one of the one things I wanted to ask you is like when you when you're a young fighter and you think like you're invincible, the game's going to be around forever, and I can continue doing this for forever. And what is like something like your advice to like a younger fighter who's maybe done something in the sport, but what's your advice to like start looking to well, I wouldn't say move on, but start the transition out of it, because I think that's something
Uh,
a lot of guys struggle with, myself included.
oh,
Right? There's there's obvious signs of when you should, but I think like a lot of guys hold on to it because, like you said, it's the only thing they know for X amount of years, and it's a scary thing to think about moving on. So, like, what would
yeah.
be your advice to younger guys or even guys that are on the tail end that they should look out for?
Yeah, and I say this line all the time to people, and it's that a fighter dies twice. So you die when you retire, and then you wait around until you die again. And
Yeah,
it sounds really sad. And that's how my life feels sometimes because I wasn't prepared for the end. So I think everyone that gets involved in it, said whether you're just getting going, you're in the middle, or at the peak of your career, or someone who's coming off the tail end, everyone should have a plan. And I talk about this quite a bit with my young guys. I'm like, if you have the work ethic to become a good fighter, a good athlete, a good competitor, and an entertainer,
Yeah.
that takes a lot of work and a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of brains. If you have all of those things, you should be putting that effort into something else at the exact same time as you're competing.
Yeah.
Because as much as training and fighting is a 24-hour a day job, it's not. You got, you know what I mean? There's a few hours of practice a day and then eating the right things and this and that. I'm like, okay, so yeah, you could be working a dead end job to pay the bills and just so you can fight, or you could be fucking hauling ass, getting a trade done, going to school, doing all the right choices. So when your career does wind down, you're already sitting on a career. You know what I mean? You're not looking for what to do next. Like I said, if you have the work ethic and the skill to be good at this, you have it to be good at anything.
Yeah.
So you really should be like, from the moment you get going, you should be planning for what's afterwards. Because no matter how good you are, if you're the elite in the world, it ends. And it could end tomorrow on the mats when you hurt your knee, or you
Yeah.
get knocked out in practice, or something bad happens. It could end any day. So you need to, from the moment you decide you want to do it for real, you need to be planning something else at the same time. Like I said, get an education, invest your money properly, do a trade. It doesn't matter. Be planning for the future, because let's say, even if you crack the top 10 or become world champion, it's going to stop. The money's going to stop coming in. So
Yeah.
you gotta, and you don't want to. Listen, the end of my career, I thought I was invincible. The end of my career kind of came as a surprise, because I hurt my neck really bad, and
Yeah.
I was just lost after that. Fortunately, I had my gym started already, and it just kind of started growing. But like I understand that feeling, and I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done yet, and like that's the problem with fighting, is like the thrill is so amazing
Yeah.
that it's so hard to let go of. So you get cut from a big show, you go back to the regionals, keep trying to get back there, chasing the dragon, and like it hardly ever happens, right? That's why you never see anyone go out on top,
Yeah.
right? You can only think of a couple people that have done it. Everyone else falls off. They try to get it back, and eventually they're just,
That's why I
they
hope.
disappear.
Why I hope Khabib never comes back. I hope
He
he.
won't. I don't believe he will.
I hope he's the example for some people, where like achieve the pinnacle of your profession and then call it a day.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
and it's funny that you gave that advice, because my strength and conditioning coach said the same thing to me. He said, like, Ashton, you're involved in one of the hardest things a human being can do in terms of sport and in life in general. Like, fighting is just it's outrageous. But he's like, if you can do that, if you can apply that work ethic to anything else, and it's only like when the COVID crap happened, that's pretty much what I did. I applied it to other
Mm,
stuff, and if I can give that advice to other people too, it's don't put your all your eggs in one basket, because
mm,
eh, even though I'm still active and still planning on competing, like for me, my journey was a lot of injuries, right?
mm,
And
mm.
it was one after the other, and it wasn't like anything that was my fault. It was like some of it was overtraining, but in MMA, it's hard to like not overtrain. Like
Yeah.
like there's so many things you have to do. And for me, it was the guilt thing. You know, when you're at home, like you already put in one session, but you're absolutely fucking dead, like you're tired. But in your head, you're like, oh, I got to go back to the gym later and train more.
Yeah.
When, and then, so one of the things I'm learning as I get older is like, if I even have to ask that question or say that to myself, it's probably a good idea to stay the fuck home. Right.
Man, that's the hardest part, man. Like, and especially the older you get, like your rest is just as important as the time you put on the mats. So
Yeah.
spend it wisely, man. Mental maturity is everything. I still struggle with that. Like, still train 2 a days just because I'm an idiot. It
Yeah.
doesn't do me any good. It just keeps me from killing people. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. But
it's
like,
true.
if I could give any advice anyway, if you ever have to be like, should I go to the gym? You should probably fucking stay home.
Yeah.
If you have that nervous energy, go for a jog or lift some weights. But like sometimes I'll ask my wife. I'll like call her. I'll be on the road. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym now, but I don't really feel like going to the gym. She's like, well, you have to come home then. I'm like, no,
Mm.
I don't want to come home. She's like, Ashton, if you even said that, that means She's like 90% of the time when you say that, I get a call later being like, I'm on the way to the hospital because I heard something. Right?
Yeah, yeah, I know. What it's the classic. One more beer. Yeah, no, I get it. Um, yeah, So I'll give you. So going back to your question there, I'm like, plan for the future. Of course, that's huge, right? Listen to your body, and very important is now something we never did. Is educate yourself on your injuries. We always just tough shit out, my generation, and for what? Now everything's broken, right?
Yeah.
Something's wrong. Go have it checked out. Figure out the fix. You mean see if is it really worth it? I've broken my neck. Was it worth it? No, yeah, it was. But was it worth it? Probably not. You know what I mean? It's like but there's so many things that you could, if we approach them from the get go instead of putting them off, you could prolong those careers. Think about the injuries you had from overtraining. If you didn't, right, you'd have years stacked on the other side of your career, but you put your foot on the gas when you didn't need to, and that's what happens, right?
Every one of my injuries, I was in the gym when I shouldn't have been in the gym. Like, and I'm open about it because I want other people to learn
Mm-hmm.
from my mistakes. Like when I tore my ACL the first time, I had done a full MMA practice, and I'm like, oh, let me stay for jujitsu class. Yeah, that was a
Mm-hmm.
fucking wrong decision. You just put in an
Yeah,
hour and a half of hard MMA training, and what ended up happening was a judo throw happened, and I tore my ACL. Right,
yeah, every time.
and
Yeah.
then I recovered from that, and I went on and fought, and then I made my pro debut, and then I was fucked up from my pro debut because I herniated a disc in my back like 2 weeks before the fight. So then that was like in December, and then in January, I'm like, oh, let me get back into it, right? And it was the same thing. I'm training, 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 and then I decide, oh, let me go to the gym on a Saturday and do some sparring. Even though I was dead tired and my back was hurting from still, I didn't address that issue, right? I just fought with it. And what happened again? Judo throw, partially tear
Yep.
my ACL again, right? You know what I mean? Every
Yeah.
injury, every time I've had a surgery, I can tell you I shouldn't have been in the gym that day. Like
Yep.
I tore my pec, same thing.
Yep.
I came home from work. I told my wife, I'm like, I don't feel like sparring today, but I'm gonna go because people were expecting me to be. No one would fucking care if I wouldn't be there, right? But then I got there, tore my fucking pec, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, if there's one thing we can tell anybody that listens to this thing is, if your body says no, listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll give you one more because I know there's a lot of people like me with dealing with different fighters and athletes and people like me or maybe potentially you over the years. And like me fighting my whole life has been to a. It always looks like I'm chasing something or I'm running away from something. It's harder to tell. But a lot of people like me, we get into this fighting and whatever else is because we're running, and because of, for me, it was because I had traumatic experiences as a child,
Yeah.
and some bad shit happened to me throughout my childhood, and all sorts of different things, and I've suffered from PTSD for many, many years, and martial arts and fighting and everything else has always been my escape for that, right? And fighting it is what made things where it's calm for me and where it's relaxed. And like I said, we like any drug, we use it to escape from
Escape. Yeah, yeah.
things from our past, right? And now the big part of the problems I'm having in my life is I didn't address those things. I just buried it with competition and fighting, and now like fighting's actually over, and things that I didn't take care of uh, when I was a younger person and whatever, or didn't know how to. Now they've all caught up, and I've really got to like face some serious fucking demons and some past stuff, right? And I think that's one of those things. Just like injuries, man, we really got to like learn to address these problems, injuries, like whether it's external or internal. You gotta like look at your life and fix yourself as a man or a woman, because you can't run from shit forever, right? Everything comes to an end, and this is my drug and your drug and whatever else, and one day you're not going to be able to use it to cover up and hide from the things that you buried down inside. So just what's one more thing, if you've got some shit that's in from your past or things you need to repair, don't wait, man. Don't wait. It's not going to get any easier, right? And then, because when this ride's over, man, life's really hard already. So if you got things that have been haunting you, you better have already fucking taken care of them.
That's a beautiful.
That's
That's a
that's what
beautiful.
I would say.
and that resonates with me too because my like everyone has different reasons for fighting. Like a lot of people think like people fight because they're like maybe violent people or whatever. Some people have rough things in their life. For me, it was like I was brought up in a great home. I was lucky to have good parents who gave me a good life, right? But for me, it was like the aggression was always suppressed, so to speak.
Hmm.
Was never allowed to express myself uh, aggressively. So then when I saw fighting, like when I saw the UFC and I saw jiu-jitsu and stuff, I was like, "Ooh, that's cool." I just wanted to do it cuz it was cool. And then
Hmm.
when I really got into it out of that white belt stage and I'm like, this is a way like I was never able to really physically express myself growing up because like let's be honest, we live in Canada. Like
Yeah.
this is a privileged lifestyle. Like if we actually travel the world and go see what other people go through, this is fucking gold, right? Even in this shitty
Hmm.
time, this is gold. Being here is gold. Being in North America and living this life is like people will give up everything for it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I was suppressed like that. My ability to express myself aggressively with control, I've never been able to do that. So when I actually did, like my first experience kickboxing, that was when I was at school in Windsor. Like I got my shit kicked in. Like they fucked me up, and I went back to my dorm and I couldn't walk, and I'm like, oh man. And then my roommate's like, "Why would you go? Are you going back?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" Like that was like when you get like I've never been hit in my life, and I got hit, and like my head was hurting. I couldn't walk because my leg was Charlie horse. For me, I'm like, I need to learn how to express myself like that, not like a violent person on the street, but like in control. So for me, that's what fighting is, and like
Hmm.
those were my demons that I had, and now that I've done this and I've competed in this sport and to me like that's why I go to the gym, right?
Yeah.
I don't go to the gym because I love exercise that much. I do, but like I go to the gym because I get to express that aggression and I express that part of me in a very nice, controlled manner so that I can be a good fucking human outside of the
Yeah.
world, right?
Yeah.
Because
No, I get it. Yeah.
if you don't do that, if you don't find those things that express those things, that's when you do stupid shit. And that,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah, for sure. It's easy to go. Yeah, it's an outlet for so many. That's why jujitsu is important for people. You can get out there and burn that off without really being, that kind of fighter or being aggressive. Like me growing up, I was the other way, man. I fought my whole life. Like my whole life, I've been fighter. Like yeah, man. And just growing up angry and scared, you know what I mean. So I fought tooth and nail since I was just a tiny little kid, and then I saw the opportunity, like to actually train and put it to use. Like that's what changed my life because I could always fight, like just fucking good at it, and then but I didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know the actual skill. I just knew I could fucking hit hard up end guys easily. I just naturally can do it. I'd take the biggest fucking guy, and I'm like, all right, well, I got this guy, right? And then someone showed me the technique behind it, and whatever else, and then it calmed me as a person. It made me a better person, and I'm like, now it's as I have a couple fighters on my roster. I'm like they're like me and they're mad and they're what I mean. They had shitty childhoods or whatever else, all these things, and I can relate to them. And I'm like, fighting is what keeps these guys from fighting and getting in trouble, right? Like it's that thing. And like yeah, it was the greatest gift that I've ever received was just someone giving me a gi and putting me on the mats because there's no question in my mind I would have died if I didn't find it. It
yeah,
was like you know what I mean? This, I've been to a lot of funerals, and that and and it easily could have been me. I could have been like if I never left my hometown and took a chance. But I wasn't even taking a chance. You know, I had nothing to lose. I just did this, and it worked out. It was the last 20 years of my life has been a fucking dream, man.
yeah.
I've been to 35 fucking countries. I've been all over the world. I fought the best guys. And you know what I mean? I've eaten in the nicest restaurants. I've flown first class, and I've done all these amazing things that I didn't even know were possible. And so all because I can fucking
'Cause you can throw some punches.
Yeah, I can take one and give one. But I think even more importantly, what put me in that position is I used all my experience and knowledge and is to give back to other people in the end. And I think this finally and it turned around and it kind of gave me what I got now in my life. You know what I mean? Like I want other people to get the gift that I got.
That's
Like and you know what I mean? That's why I learned. I fighting saved my life. It's ridiculous, but it really did. I'm like, so I got to make sure that I can share that with other people because there's other people out there like me, man. It's just what we know how to do. Just got to learn how to control it and make it work for you.
before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one thing. I like to ask all the OGs this because their experience, you guys' experience, far outweighs mine. But like, in your opinion, what is the one trait, like one trait that you take into a competition or a fight or just on the mats that sets you apart from everybody else? Like, what was the one thing that I have over everybody?
For me, I don't know if I can nail one thing down. It depends on the like it competition or a fight. I'm ready to fucking die, man.
Yeah,
Ready to die. I'll kill you. I don't want. It's weird because I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm not that guy. I'm not malicious. But if you and I were to fight, I'm like, thank you for the opportunity. I hope we both go home safe to our families.
yeah,
But I'm gonna fucking kill you before I let you kill me. That's just it. I don't want to hurt you. I want you to stop. That's it.
yeah.
And that I have that mentality when it comes to competition and life and whatever else. But the other thing, I think what separates me more than anyone else, and I think you've been around me and you know it, and you've seen what I helped build and whatever else. I'm like, man, I, I'm very introverted. I don't like being around people very much. You'd never know it because of what I do. But
Yeah,
I'm like, but I really do like people, and I want everyone around me to be better. So I'll do whatever I got to do to make everyone else better around me, and make them feel better and perform better and be better people. I just want the world to be a better place than when I found it. So I have to put into the world like the only way I know how to make that possible is use what was given to me, and that was to fight. So if I can teach other people to fight and hopefully put them on the path and give them the same skills that I got, then I'm gonna leave the world better than when I fucking got here.
there
That's
you go. That's beautiful, Professor. It's beautiful.
Thank you, thank
Anyway,
you.
thank you for your time, Professor.
No problem, man. It's
that
a
was
pleasure, bud.
learn so much from you guys every time I talk to you, and I can't wait to get back on the mats with you and just
We will soon. We
yeah.
will soon. We got some really awesome stuff happening out this way. So when you're ready to get back to it and you're healthy, you let me know and I'll tell you where to be. All right.
Well, we'll talk off air, and
You got it, man.
I
You
thank
got it.
you everybody for joining us for another episode of Grind My Gears. Don't forget to fucking subscribe and like. Everybody's like, oh, your show's good. I enjoy your podcast. Then fucking show some love. Subscribe, share. Stop being assholes. It's fucking easy. Just click the button, please.
You got it.
Thank you.
Hey, and
Yep.
yeah, check out. Please follow me on Instagram. It's at Unwanted LTR.
Yes, and
That's my new business, and like I said, I love my job. I get to help a lot of people out. It's a very fulfilling job, and it's fun as hell. So
yes, if you have
yeah,
tattoos
good.
that you don't want anymore, that is the guy to go see.
Yeah, we trust. There's a lot of bad ones out there. You wouldn't believe the shit I've seen in the last few months. So
Oh, my wife.
cool.
Before we end this, my wife watches a lot of that Ink Master show, and
Yeah, yeah.
there's some of them on there that I'm like, fuck no. If you put that on me,
Oh,
I would have punched that guy in the face.
uh, I've got like I said, I can't. I'm coming up with something. So I've got hours and hours of like footage now. You wouldn't believe the shit that people do. It's crazy. So like I'm gonna come up with my own show.
All
It's
right,
gonna be amazing.
follow
Yeah.
Professor Bruckmann at on what's the link?
Unwanted LTR.
Unwanted LTR. All right,
Yeah.
thank you everybody for joining us. Tune in for next time. Buddy, thank you for watching. Please do me a favor, click the like below, share on YouTube, share on Instagram, share on Facebook, spread the word so I can keep creating more content for you keep providing you with a great podcast experience. Peace out.